I know the first thing you're going to think is, oh wow, vectors, lines, graphs, this is going to be really complicated. And it really isn't. When you talk about mapping for position, you're talking about three things. Perceptual maps are about comparing you to the products that are out there, which is basically the competition. Preference maps are what kind of features, what kind of values that people prefer in their products. And joint space maps are you put them both on the same map at the same time. That's all it is. So all I'm going to talk about is how you go about getting some of this data and what it looks like. And so in terms of perceptual maps, it was actually originally a psychological tool where they see how people perceive objects in multi-dimensions. The preference basically shows where your customer is leaning, and the joint space brings the two together. The nice thing about maps is that they're a nice, concise way of you taking a lot of information and just putting it in one place. You can use multiple values, and what it comes down to is the map can be judged by, you could do it qualitatively, or you could assign weights to things, numbers, and that's referred to as factor analysis. So those weights, you actually go by a solid number. Here's an example of a perceptual map. And so based on whether or not I'm cool or whether or not I'm economical, you can figure out where you place relative to everybody else. And so should Dell be concerned? Yeah, they probably should be, because they're in the middle. And when you're in the middle, you basically just don't stand out. What factor analysis is about is, okay, well, how do I come up with this line or graph? And what I do is I list out all my attributes, and I have customers rate them. And so they rate it on a scale of 1 to 5, and based on that, I could actually fit a line because each of those ratings has a weight to it. And so it'll tell me, like, for example, if I'm cool and I get lots of cool ratings, then it means my line is going to be closer to cool. If I don't get good ratings, it's going to be far away. And so in terms of your research, what you're trying to do is get these data points and figure out how to weight between all these factors. And so one approach is called multidimensional scaling. And what that is, you list out the brands and then you ask people to pair up and see how do you compare to that brand. What's analogous. And so here's an example of a map. And as you can see, what they show is the competitors. But they also show how those competitors, how close they are to certain features like comfort, convenience. And so you place yourself there, and then you can see where you exist in that space. When you make these models, price is a difficult dimension, and the reason where you decide where you're going to position yourself, and the reason why price is so hard is that people can undercut you on it. So in terms of preference-based maps, it's about points and how far away they are. And so, as you can see from the bottom one, you determine the point where you actually exist. The weakness of this kind of technique is, okay, based on me being here, how do I need to change my values so I can get more profit? You don't get that off of a preference map. Joint space maps, you could do it by points or you could do it by vectors, meaning you can do it based on a line. And the vector point, and this has to do with bottoms up, where customers want to be, is called the preference vector. That's what the customers value most. And so you have to decide. So if you're doing bottoms up, you would say, okay, let's create a product as close to the preference vector as possible. But as you can see here, they have the different functional values as well as where the companies are positioned. And that's a joint space map. See, not so bad. I might quiz you on like definitions, like what is a preference vector or something like that, or show you a map and say, you know, where's the best place to go compete or something like that. But anyway, positioning sets up your perception of where the customer is. Joint space maps are the tools that they use to figure it out. Vector positioning, you could do either qualitative or quantitatively, but whatever scale you pick, just be consistent about it. Otherwise, you don't have a good comparison between one and the other. And then you decide, in terms of positioning myself, do I want to be bottoms up or top down?